Yo, what's going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 3 live stream for the Farmers Insurance Open. Gonna get you ready for all of your exposure for moving day with, first off, a breakdown of the Draftkings slate and what we're doing for our showdown lineups. Afterwards, gonna go through the underdog and the prize pick side, attacking some of the prop value that we have over there as well. Overall, getting you ready for everything that you're going with and any questions that you have in the chat as well. But other than that, I hope everyone's having a fantastic Friday. We got a little bit of whiskey in the cup. We're celebrating after the, getting through a long, hard week. So everyone out there is hopefully having a fantastic times themselves, and let's get after it for tomorrow. So first order of business is to smash that like button if you guys haven't already. Yesterday's live stream was our biggest non-major live stream of all time, so that was pretty stoked. So fantastic support from the community, so I owe it all to you guys out there. But maybe we can beat that for the weekend. We've got more people available to play some DFS over the next couple of days, so we can see if we can build on that going forward. But they got Alan in the chat. It says nothing better than Friday nights with the GOAT. Let's get a round 3 and get some shippers. Amen to that, and cheers to you. We got B Hayes with a question about Howtong. We'll go through the deep dives later on. And what's going on, Corey? You're asking about the slate locking at 5 a.m. I don't think so. They'll likely move it back, just waiting for the first tee times to get published, which came out about a half an hour ago. So they'll just lock. They'll get it closer to what I think is about 11 a.m. Eastern time. But they got Jay in the chat as well. Welcome on in. Let's go ahead and get this thing going. But the first order of business is to review what happened today. And if you guys ended up tailing the prop slip from last night, it did cash for a 1.5x payout. So it was a push on Alex Noren, who shot the exact 69. But Matthew Pavon, who started on a heater, unfortunately, did go under for us. It was a hell of a sweat. He had 3 birdies through his first 6 holes, but 0 through his last 12. And that was after making this 45-footer that I was venting about on Twitter. Maybe my bitching and complaining had the golf gods give us a little bit of a bone because he did not make anything after that. So that was good. From the DFS angle, had a few runners in some of the large GPPs as well. Actually finished in 10th in a contest with about 3,500 entries. But because it's such a top-heavy payout, and some of these GPPs actually still lost money despite finishing in 10th place, which shows you the craziness, the variance that we have when you're playing DFS. But it was a pretty solid lineup, if I might say so myself. It didn't really have any stinkers in it. I guess you could say a Noren and Novak at just about 42 points could have been a little bit better, but you could have made a lot worse plays than those two as well. So I felt pretty decent about my process. And if I had scored an extra 6 fantasy points, had been in 5th place, then it would have been a profitable slate for me. And that shows you just kind of the fine margins that we have when you're doing this. And if it had been an extra maybe 2 birdies that I made on top of that, I could have been well into the profit if we had done that. So I like where we're at. The player pool was pretty solid across the board, I have to say, and stoked what we have heading into the weekend here. And the first order of business will be to take a look at the weather forecast, which looks pretty calm, just like it was for Thursday and Friday. And the pin locations will be changing. That'll be the main change with the course difficulty going from Thursday and Friday to Saturday. But the weather conditions are almost a carbon copy. You're talking about sub 10 miles an hour of sustained winds the entire time. Wind gusts that do get a little bit more significant towards the very end of the day, closer to about 10 miles an hour for the last couple hours. But because they're going off an hour earlier than they did for the first couple rounds, they're not even going to be out there that late into the afternoon. So maybe some of your latest starters do play a little bit more difficult. But the thing that I think is a little bit more impactful for your round 3 process is conditions getting harder because of the firmness of the course. And though the scoring was a little bit easier at the South course today, it was actually harder at the North course. And if you take a look at the first versus the second half of tee times today, it was about a half a stroke harder in the afternoon. It's harder in general at the North course. And I think it has to do with the greens having a little bit more bounce to them. And that combined with some tucked pin locations on the weekend is, I think, going to lead to some difficult scoring. So I don't think you're going to see a whole bunch of -6s to -8s like you had for the first couple of days. Your Seamus Powers of the world going nuclear low and whatnot. A good score for tomorrow in Showdown is going to be in that -3 to -5 range. I think anything -4, -5 or better is a guarantee to make the optimal lineup. But a -3 from a marginal priced guy in the 6 and the 7K range is probably going to be enough as well. It's just that style of course, more of a grinded out fest, which means we don't need as many high birdie or better percentage players as maybe what we typically would do. And we're looking for guys with the ball striking floor. So more on that a little bit later on when we go through the shots gained metrics and what we're actually looking for in our plays. But the weather, not going to have a huge impact. And the other thing to note, at least from the showdown strategy standpoint, is that it is threesomes off of both tees. So even if there was a little bit of wind kicking up towards the very end, there would be little to no opportunity for a weather edge because of them going off in threesomes. And the reason why they're going off in threesomes is that there was a lot of guys that made the cut. I think 74 players to be exact. If it's closer to 69, 70 players that are making the cut, they'll go off in twosomes almost every single time. But anything closer to 75 plus, especially this time of year when they have a little bit less daylight to work with, they're going to run it out in that format. So it does unfortunately limit that aspect to us. But even if we did have twosomes off of one, there wouldn't be an edge there to begin with. But where we can find an edge, and where there's always an edge, regardless the kind of weather situation that we're dealing with, is going to be with the ownership angle. And so we're going to go through the top 20 in the ownership again, giving an idea of where the rest of the field is going with their lineups. Because if there's one thing you can do in just an 18-hole sample size of golf, is embrace the variance, embrace the chaos that comes with just having 1 day of golf to work with, knowing that there's going to be the Joel Damons of the world that make 3 eagles and nuke the slate. By the way, Joel Damon was in my player pool and I had 15% today. So that was one of my plays that ended up going really well in that lineup that you saw there before. But you're not going to get to those sort of plays unless you embrace that aspect, because a Joel Damon, from a median projection standpoint, was never really going to stand out compared to his peers. It was the ball striking stats personally that put me onto him in that process. But that's why knowing where the rest of the field is going and accounting for that can give you the absolute nuts at times, because it's very hard to narrow down exactly who's going to be those sort of plays. So if guys are going to be 3 to 5 times higher owned than the players around them, then they're almost automatic fades in most cases. And some of the top end players here maybe a little bit exempt to that role, because everyone up top is going to be getting some ownership, but it's important to know where the rest of the field is going. So we're going to catch up on chat. I'm going to get a sip of this whiskey because I haven't even gotten to try it yet at this point. It's 100 proof, so it's a little bit stronger than I like, but we'll see if we can bear it over here in a second. But we got Jay Steele in the chat. Cheers to you over here. And let's see if we can drink this without making too much of a face, because I haven't been drinking very much lately at all over the last few months. So I'm keeping it light, and it definitely impacts me a little bit more these days. I'm going to put people on Damon, the ball striking stats. I'm somebody that was in my player pool. So unfortunately, a lot of the field got the nuts from me and my Patreon page on what to do there, but that was the reasoning for it. He had some decent round one stats, didn't get a lot of it out with the putter. And yeah, the people that were doing the deep dives definitely got rewarded on that one today. Can we deep dive Novak? Absolutely. When we get to the players a little bit later on, he's a very interesting stat line through 2 rounds. Can we deep dive Sudarshan Gilamaraju and Christopher Ryan? We absolutely can. What's going on, Mr. Sean Rome? You embraced 100% of Damon because of my projections page. Jeez Louise, bro. That's the nuts. I don't have the stones to play 100%. I have 107 lineups. That's what I played for today. But dude, that must have worked out really well for you. So, hey, I didn't take anything down today. I slightly lost money, but I have a sneaking suspicion that you probably didn't with 100% Damon. But let's talk through the ownership before we start breaking down some players and going through actually building a player pool. Number one in the ownership looks like it's going to be a Sibu Kim. Sibu's $9,700, minus 10, and he was the highest owned player today, which I was not expecting. I thought that'd be Cam Young, but in a lot of the contests that I entered, maybe it was different for the ones that you guys entered. Sibu Kim was like 40% owned in a lot of those contests. So a little bit surprising there. Maybe it's because I told you all that Cam Young would be the highest owned, and some of you ended up fading him because of that. It looks like it's the biggest show in PGA DFS for Showdown these days. So maybe it is going to have that kind of an impact. But both of those guys were the number 1 and 2 in most contests, and they're going to be up there once again. But Justin Rose, who, by the way, do we have to call him Justin Scheffler at this point? Like, it looks like world number 1 with how he's been playing over the first couple rounds. He's up there now at that minus 17 mark. So all 3 of those guys getting close to 30%, if not even over 30% with the Sibu Kim. But rather than the 40%ers that we had for round 2 Showdown, I do want to throw out that the ownership's a bit less condensed than what it was before, because we have all the guys on the same golf course, and there was still a cut line. So there are guys towards the top that did not make it to the weekend. Tisk Xander Schauffele, who ended up bombing about 40% of my main slate lineups this week. Thank God for Showdown. That's what I'm thankful for, having these single round slates to attack over the weekend. But these sort of guys are actually lower owned in some cases, not with Justin Rose, but with some of these other players than they were yesterday, just because of that aspect. So keep that in mind. The ownership dynamics a little bit different, which means there's going to be some spots in the 8, 9, and 10K range where you actually can get some differentiation. It's not going to be just the guys on the harder South course that are in that single digit range. everyone's going to be on the same playing field this time around, and you're actually going to get guys closer to 10 to 12% that you can get some leverage on. And these players that you're seeing listed here aren't those options. These are the players that are getting a little bit more steam. Matt McNeely at -9, Michael Thorbjornsen, somebody I bet. I'd feel pretty good about Thorbjornsen if, Justin Rose hadn't teed it up this week. He'd only be about 4 shots off the lead and in prime position to get into it. But anyone that's within the top 15 to top 20 of this event is getting a little bit more extra steam. And when they're guys at the top end of the pricing, that's why you're going to see them in this top 10. But we've also got some 7K range and 8K range guys that you're seeing come up here as well, like your Ryan Gerards, that's over 20% ownership. He was for today's showdown slate as well. He was up there in the top 5 of the ownership in most of those contests. And Max McGreevy at -11, he's only $8,000, but over 15% owned. Seamus Power at -13, he's in second place. He's about 14% owned. But even your players like Erasmus Niergaard Peterson and Nikolai Højgaard they're from Denmark, right? Both of those two players. Matthew McCarty at $7,600 as well are all getting some extra steam because of how they played so far. And it's not to say that form is something that you completely throw out, because it does matter to some extent, but it doesn't matter to the extent where people play guys in ownership. Like, they overplay it. They overplay the form in 99% of cases. And players that just hardly made the cut, it's worth noting, are still playing better than the average player this week. They still have above average form if they made it to Saturday and Sunday, which means, sure, the Justin Roses look unbeatable through 2 rounds. Well, what happens to those players in most cases? Normally they come back down to earth. It doesn't mean they're going to shoot +7, +8 and completely give away everything they've done. But if he were to shoot even par tomorrow, instead of like the -6, -7s we've seen the first few days, that would surprise no one. And it definitely wouldn't surprise me. So that's why it's usually worth getting to some of the guys that are a little bit lower owned. It's not to say that they're due. It's just that they have very similar optimal rates to a lot of the players at the top, maybe marginally lower because they're playing quote unquote worse golf compared to the guys at the top end of the board. But some of these guys are double to 3, even 5 times the ownership of the players around them. So that's what I mean. It's just way too much of an overreaction to how they've played so far, especially when golf is one of the most unpredictable sports that we have in DFS. It is so chaotic from round to round. If you don't know that ahead of time, you might find yourself playing too much of this chalk. But if you remind yourself of that before you go out there and build your player pool, you can be intentional about getting different and taking some of those guys who just hardly got through the cut line. And for round 3 showdown, those are some of my favorite plays to get to because they're lower owned. They're still playing solid golf, like I said. And you can find some like 8, 9, 10K range players that just made it through the cut line that are going to be closer to 10% ownership as opposed to this 25 to 30% like you're seeing here towards the very top. And that's just the top 20 in the ownership that I was showing you here on the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet is from my Patreon page, by the way. If you guys want to download this with all my projections, also my entire player pool for round number 3, you guys can find that via the link in the description of the video. The Golf DFS tier is how you guys download this. I do this for main slate every week, also rounds 2 through 4 showdown. It not only has all my projections on there, but my projected ownership on there. Also my entire player pool with all the rhyme and reasoning behind every play that I'm getting to. And I think there's like 32 players, give or take a couple in either direction, in my player pool for tomorrow. And every single one of them has the rhyme and reasoning behind it. And that could be your ball striking poppers, short game regression candidates. Only half the field played with shots gained metrics today. So we're kind of limited from that department, but still some players that really stand out there. They've got high upside players, a few less than normal just because this is a harder scoring golf course, but still something you can look at. Getting a birdie streak and making 5 to 6 birdies is, even if you shoot even par, might be an optimal play. We got course history, guys that have played well at Torrey Pines over the years, also good POA putters. And yeah, the high upside, the POA putters are utilized a little bit less because now we're at the south course as opposed to the north course, which was a little bit easier. But this course history, these shots gained metrics are really being leaned into for my player pool. So like I said, if you guys want to see everyone I'm playing, you guys can find that over there. But now let's go through some shots gained metrics and what we can learn from the round 2 data. So we're going to bring up Bet the Number. They have all the shots gained metrics that you could possibly hope for. And we're going to start with looking at the round 2 ball strikers. And this is the most consistent part of golf from round to round. So this is typically where I start my process when I'm playing showdown. And some of these guys will get some extra steam because the rest of the field isn't completely oblivious to that fact. And for example, if we go to round number 1, we take a look at the ball striking list. Joel Damon down here, he gained ball striking about 2 strokes to the field, and he was about a field average player in those 2 short game categories. And that was the reason why I used him in quite a few of my lineups. And like I mentioned with the top yesterday, these guys that gained ball striking that were about field average with the 2 short game categories were the absolute nuts. And what did those guys do? Sibu shot -4. Rasmus Njergaard Peterson shot -3. Andrew Novak shot -3. These weren't slate-breaking scores, but they were all very solid for players that were at the top end there. That's the kind of stat profile that we're looking for in round number 2. So when we take a look at the top end of the list here, Ario did make his fair share of putts. He's also a lower tier player, so it's still good to see the ball striking stats, but that's a bit of a red flag, or maybe not the best play in my opinion to get to a Rio. But like your Chris Goddard-ups, your Jackson Subers that are kind of known for striking the ball, you'll love to see that. Keith Mitchell that gained ball striking but lost about 3 strokes in the short game categories. If he's even remotely close to the same ball striking and then just a neutral in the short game categories, that's a nuclear round for Keith Mitchell there. And even a Goddard-up, let's go back to that. He lost about a stroke on the greens. He's even a neutral there. And even if he's not quite to the same standard that he was with the ball striking stats, he could still post something like -2, -3 tomorrow and get to that optimal lineup. So a lot of these guys up here are worthy of an extra point or 2 boost in your projections. Justin Rose and Adam Shake and Adam Scott are players that also really hit the ball well, about that 3 shots gained mark. And really anyone that gained over 1.5 strokes to the field, you want to be giving a little bit of extra attention to. So that includes your Pearson Cooties here, your Hao Tong Lees of the world, your Zicheng Zhao's, Wyndham Clark's, Patrick Rogers as well. And all these guys made the cut. And is that a coincidence? I don't think it's not, right? This is a hard golf course. Ball striking is always the name of the game when you're trying to shoot something like -2 to -3 at a tough track like this. And over the next few rounds, it's going to be a lot of our focus as well. So that's the ball striking categories. And then when we go over here to the short game as well, we can sort this by shots gained putting. These guys that gained a whole bunch of putting stats aren't really looked at in the same kind of positive light. It's a bit of a red flag, actually, to gain a whole bunch putting, because to do that in back-to-back rounds is extremely rare. So your players like Celinda, a Rose, even a Zach Bachal that gained over 3 strokes into the positive there, it's hard to believe that they're going to do that tomorrow as well. And if they had decent ball striking stats like a Justin Rose, maybe it's not as big of a deal, because if he's a 0 with the ball striking, 0 with the short game, and then he gains 3 strokes ball striking again, he's going to be totally fine for tomorrow. But these players like Zach and Isaiah that were closer to neutral with the ball striking stats, it is a bit of a negative to see that kind of putting. Whereas if we sort this by the players that lost a whole bunch of strokes putting today, if they were able to make the cuts, which you can see most of them did not make the cut of the players that are at the bottom end of this list, but like a Marcelo Rozo that actually gained strokes ball striking today, but lost 2.5 strokes putting. If he's even a neutral with the putter tomorrow and then holds up at least a neutral with the ball striking stats, that's about a 3-shot improvement from what he did today. And we're going to need better ball striking than just about a neutral round. But for example, a Keith Mitchell, who we pointed out before, that was one of the best ball strikers in the field, but that lost about 3 strokes short game. He's a classic example of one of these short game regression candidates. And Steven Yeager, we would even throw into that as well. He lost over 2 strokes short game, and he didn't gain ball striking, but he only lost about a 1/2 stroke to the field. So he was about field average. That's not the worst profile that we've ever seen. A lot of these guys missed the cut, as I was saying, but like your Goddard-ups, he'd be even a small short game regression candidate. And you can look at the around the green as well. These guys that gained a whole bunch around the green, you're not going to chip in 2 to 3 times every day. That's just not sustainable whatsoever. But if you lost a whole bunch of around the green, but you were okay ball striking, those could be some short game candidates as well. And Celinda, though, he did gain a whole bunch putting, so those are kind of conflicting factors there. But a Jason Day losing over 2 strokes in the short game categories isn't going to happen very often on tour. So that's how I use the round 2 stats to my advantage. But as you'll see here, we don't have the stats for everyone. There are a lot of guys that played the North course without the shot trails on it that were kind of in the dark on. So to go back to that DFS sheet from before, that's why we have rhymes and reasons that aren't just with the round 2 shots gained metrics, so that we can build a well-rounded player pool. And that's where the high upside plays, even though they're not as prominent for tomorrow, come in. Same thing with the good pull putters. In course history, how people have played at Torrey Pines, it's been extremely sticky over the years. Is another way to get to some of those players too. And I'm not personally looking at the round 1 shots gained metrics for this top 2 categories. I guess you could if you wanted to and you had to find some extra plays, but I was able to round off with 30 plus players with these 5 tags. And the thing that I don't think you have to use these exact tags yourself when building your own personal player pool. But I think the important thing to take from this live stream and what we're going through here is to have a process for getting to all of your plays, not to have anyone in there for just a random reason, right? Just, you don't want to get rid of the nasty plays that are in there for no reason so that we can have a more intentional player pool. I promise you it's going to have better long-term results if you go that direction. So that's what I want to point out for DFS. Now let's go through any deep dives that you guys have for me in the live chat. And then after that, we're going to build a lineup on Draftkings and then go through the prize picks in the underdog side. That'll include some averages, the boards on those different sites. I've already entered a slip on underdog, so we'll go through that together. And then also some matchup bets towards the very end. So if you're here for that, probably another 10, 15 minutes or so, and then we'll be on to that. But we still got some player pool deep dives to do, and then also some strategy talk as well. So bear with us as we get through that. If you guys are just joining us as well, also go ahead and smash that like button if you guys haven't already, and subscribe to the channel so you guys don't miss any of the content to come, because we don't just do this for moving day. We'll also have a live stream for round number 4 and every event on the PGA Tour schedule this year. So cheers to you, and let's get to some of those deep dives that we had in the chat before. Ooh, it is a strong whiskey, especially for somebody that's not used to it. But let's go through the Haotong stats. So he did play the South Course today. I bet him outright at 100-1 this week. So I love to see him actually going low at the harder of the two tracks. And he did it across the board. He gained in all 4 stat categories. Him gaining 2.5 strokes short game, it's not a massive red flag, but it is a bit of a red flag because Haotong Li is not a very consistent player in those 2 categories. At the same time, though, he gained 2.3 strokes with the ball striking stats. So it's a 6.5, a 7 out of 10 stat profile. If he had been a little bit more ball striking heavy and then maybe closer to neutral with the short game stats, I'd be tempted to give him even like an 8.5, a 9 out of 10, but still a lot better than most players that you have in that 7K range. And I hope he can continue it over the next couple of days. And the reason why I bet him outright, and I think it's favorable for his chances in rounds 3 and 4 showdown, was for the South Course fit. He's an excellent ball striker, but he's playing his best golf. We saw him getting contention against Scotty Scheffler in the Open Championship at another off-the-tee heavy course. And that's exactly what we have with the Torrey Pines South Course. So, yeah, Haotong Li, I'm hoping we can get a couple low rounds from him. It feels like he's probably not going to win at this point because of where Justin Rose is, but I guess you never know. He said, where's the next one? The Damon one. Yeah, we showed you the shots gained metrics on that. Ball striking stats were there on him. Let's look at some Andrew Novak shots gained metrics. He said it's looked interesting over the first couple days. So he did play the North Course today, but we can go back to round 1, and that's where the ball striking really popped off. That's why I used him in lineups, and I wish the putter could have been a little bit hotter. I was going through his shot trails. He didn't have the shots gained metrics to use for round number 2, but he kept hitting greens. He hit a bunch of greens in regulation, but wasn't converting on the putts. So we'll see how it goes for round 3. The fairway percentage also looks like it could have been part of the problem today. You got to hit more fairways if you're going to post those birdies. So if you can clean up the driving, he could be somebody that's trending for round number 3. And the round 1 shots gained metrics were extremely favorable. That's why I was on him for today. Let's look at Yellow Miraju, and then we'll look at Raiden as well. Yellow Miraju seems like a pretty good ball striker. Small sample size so far. Round number 1, gained off the tee, lost approach, and then lost around the green and gained putting. Yeah, it's a 5 out of 10. It's just kind of all over the place. Not that much that we can learn from that, I'd say. Round 2, we don't have the shots gained metrics from, but he did make 6 birdies and then 1 bogey or worse. Any eagles in there? Just kind of curious to see if he was able to do that. No, all just regular birdies are better. I don't really think we can learn that much from the stats because they were from 2 days ago and today. Of course, he was just kind of on the easier course and did the scoring that you would expect from somebody on that easier course. But he's played well to start this year. You can't say that for all the guys that just got their tour card. Just to go back to some of those finishes, did miss the cut at the Amex, but was -10, was relatively close to making the weekend, and then had that T13 finish at the Sony Open. And both weeks, shots gained into the positive of the ball striking stats. So that's why I said it kind of looks like he's a ball striker from what we've seen so far. So far this week, though, it's a little bit inconclusive. So I'm going to have to give him the 5 out of 10. I don't think there's that much we can say there. And then the other one you had a question about was Chris Wrighton, if I remember correctly. He was super short game dependent, and I bet him outright. So I actually, want to see the exact opposite of what we have there. But yeah, short game is over 3 strokes into the positive. In fact, 3.5 strokes into the positive between the around the green and the putting. And he lost 3.6 strokes on approach. So the shots gained profile would be like a 2 out of 10, probably about as disadvantageous as a profile as you're going to find. Does that mean that he's unplayable though? No, because a lot of people are going to see those stats and then not want to use them. he was a high birdie percentage guy on the DP World Tour, and he was number 2 on points coming over from the DP World Tour. So you're talking about a high pedigree player, somebody that I think will win on the PGA Tour at some point. Maybe not this year, but maybe in like a couple years if he can keep his card. I think he has a good chance to kind of ascend to the next level. The shots gained profile would not be the reason for using him, though. That is pretty poor, I'd have to say. Let's see. What's up, Luke? You said you sad Xander missed that putt on 18. Yeah, me too, man. Not only just for my lineups, but for the cut streak as well. It would have been nice to see him keep it going. But now Scotty's got the longest streak at 65. So respect to him. And we know that that's going to continue for a while. So I wonder how long he's going to end up taking that one. Thoughts on Suber? Love Suber. The shots gained metrics, ball striking wise, were really popping for today. 2.9 strokes on approach, 0.7 off the tee. I mean, he's a 6K range guy for a reason. So we got to always add that disclaimer before I say that Suber looks like he's playing pretty good golf. But if I'm ever going to use a Jackson Suber, it's when he's hitting the ball like he is right now. And it's the short game categories, he lost half a stroke around the green. He lost about 0.75 with the putter. That reeks of a comeback and a little bit of a bounce back there. So I'll be using him in quite a few lineups. And yeah, it's usually not somebody I'm getting to, but we'll be in this sort of scenario. What's going on? Antonio says, yo, welcome on in. You're terrified to play Justin Rose and you're terrified to fade Justin Rose. Yeah, that's the situation we're in, James. He's high owned, so you don't want to use him because of the ownership standpoint, but he's also minus 17 through 2 rounds. So you're like kicking yourself. You're like, of course he's going to shoot -5 or -6 tomorrow. I'm fading him. So I'm with you on the terrified to fade Justin Rose side. Playing him, I actually probably wouldn't be terrified if I was playing Justin Rose. He's playing some pretty good golf, but you've got to be bold to win GPPs. And that's one of the few bold decisions that I'll be making for tomorrow. Your guy Damon is back on top of the leaderboard. Can he maintain this? Yeah, I think he's got a decent chance to. I mean, the round 1 stats were solid. Round 2 was on the easier course, so we don't have the shots gained metrics, but 85% of your fairways and 83% of your greens regulation, you'd have to imagine that he was at least a neutral in those 2 categories. So yeah, I hope he continues it. I mean, he's had a lot of struggles over the last couple of years. One of the more rootable, likable characters that we have on the PGA Tour. Unfortunately, though, I do have to kind of spoil the party here. He's been really bad for a while as well. So I think any betting man like myself would say that he's probably going to come back down to earth over the next couple of days. But I hope he bucks the trend. It happens, guys. Snap out of it. They get back to what we know they're capable of doing all the time. It's just that's rare. And that's why we have to relish it whenever these players are actually able to do that. What's going on, Noah? I said, got here on time today. You did. Yeah, you caught us in the last couple minutes last night. Taking a look at Rio and Gerard. Let's take a look at the shots gained. Rio was number 1 in shots gained ball striking. So I think I see why you're looking at him. Was it about 4.5 strokes between those 2 categories? It's hard to really give you any pushback there. Gerard, too. I took for the top 10 bet this week. He was a core play for me for a reason. He did play the South Course round 1 and ball struck the heck out of it. That's why I liked him for today. And he paid it off with a -5 round in round 2. So we don't have the shots gained metrics. He definitely could have driven it better. He only hit 57% of his fairways. But even then, he still made 0 bogeys or worse. So, I mean, Gerard's just playing some of the best golf in the world at this point. Just to go ahead and show you guys that. What is it? Second, his last 3 starts. The other second place finish was on the DP World Tour, so that's why it's not here. But even outside of that, he had the win at the Barracuda, played well at the Black Desert Championship as well. Yeah, man, give me some Ryan Gerard, not just this week, but just buying stock for 2026. It would not surprise me if by the end of the year he had like a Ben Griffin type of year. It's just that kind of trajectory that we've seen over the last few months. And the players that are actually capable of doing that sort of thing and actually making it sustainable, JJ Spawn last year did the same thing, right? Are ball strikers. You don't do it if you're a luck sacking piece of shit putter. Like you'll win an event and then you'll disappear. If you're a luck sacking piece of shit putter, the guys that actually become top 25 players in the world are the ones that do it off the tee and with the approach play. And that's Ryan Gerard to a tee. So that's why I'm so bullish on his chances for this year. And that's a massive hot take, obviously. Me saying that he's going to have that kind of a step forward, but I'm willing to say it now. I usually have to see some shots gained. I have to see some top-end finishes before I'll say that sort of thing, and we've seen it on Ryan. He said, Luke, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would I rank Adam Scott? Let's take a look. I'll give you an answer. If I could spell Adam Scott right, I'd be able to bring it up a little bit quicker for you. Well, you picked a good one. Somebody that I'm using because of this kind of profile. And I have to give him like a 9 out of 10. He gained about 3 strokes ball striking, lost around the green, lost about a stroke with the putter as well. So we'd expect him to be a little bit sharper in those two categories, that being the around the green and the putting. And then the off the tee and approach play, which should be the most consistent part of golf, he's doing it exactly like we'd like it. So 9 out of 10. Great. If you're looking to play an Adam Scott, I'm using them, and I would give you zero pushback whatsoever if you're doing so yourself. Thoughts on a Hideki bounce back? You honestly didn't think he played that bad today. I agree with you on that. Just shooting, +1 isn't the worst by any means on that golf course. He lost on off the tee. He gained on approach, and then he lost in the short game categories. I mean, it's a 6 out of 10 stat profile, which might be surprising to hear, but he gained about 0.7 strokes ball striking. That's solid. And then he lost in the 2 short game categories. Yeah, Hideki bounced back is squarely in the cards, and I hope he can pull it off because I've got the outright bet on him this week, and he's one of the last few studs standing that I have in DFS this week. So yeah, go Hideki. He's the lineups with Xander are dead, but the ones with Hideki are still alive at this point. Can I deep dive Kita Nakajima? Last one. Hey, you don't have to apologize for the deep dives. I love doing this. He said, thank you as always for the A+ knowledge. Yeah, let's look at Kita Nakajima. DP World Tour stud, by the way, ball striker from that side of the pond. Relatively accurate off the tee. I wouldn't call him a bomber, though. It's more of like an accuracy first player, like a Siwoo Kim. He gained off the tee, lost on approach, and then gained about a stroke putting. Yeah, it's a 5 out of 10 stat profile. You like to see the decent ball striking, about 0.3 strokes into the positive, but the gaining a stroke putting is a slight negative too. I will say, though, Kita Nakajima's profile in general is extremely favorable at golf courses like this, where the ball striking and the precision is going to be rewarded. I don't know if I like him as much at Birdie Fest as opposed to the kind of events that we have here. So though he's like a 5 out of 10 with the shots gained profile, it's probably closer to like a 6 or even a 7 out of 10 overall because of the kind of course fit that he has for Torrey Pines. So great question. And again, don't apologize for that. You're able to ask as many as you want. If you've got other ones, feel free to go ahead and fire ahead, man. It's nice seeing Tom Kim make a cut. Yeah, it is a nice change of scenery. Can I check out his stats? Of course. Take a look at who I used to call the GOAT. Can't call him the GOAT anymore. So no stats from today. Round 1, he lost ball striking and then gained with the around the green and putting. So the shots gained profile from Thursday, at least, was like a 3.5 out of 10. Today, he hit 64% of his fairways. That's above average. And he hit 72% of his greens. That was probably about the average. At the North Course, I don't have the exact average calculated over there. They don't have the shot trails, so we can't do it very easily. Tom Kim, though, I hope he can keep it going, man, because, I mean, you alluded to it. It's nice to see him make a cut because that's not something that he's been doing that regularly. He did make the cut at the Amex. He just hasn't had any spike performances really since the Scottish Open, which is Tom Kim style golf. It's good to see that he's been somewhat more consistent, though. So, yeah, hopefully he can continue that momentum, man. And I don't even think this is a good week for him, like a good course fit by any means. So the fact that he was able to make the cut at Torrey Pines, the more I think about it, is rather impressive. Like, this is a course where it's all about the distance. It's about scoring around the green play. You more so play them at courses where you want to hit fairways and you want to have really good iron play. And that still gets rewarded somewhat around here, but there are courses that are better for that kind of player. So, yeah, I think it's a good sign. Thoughts on Ramey? Haven't really given that much thought to Ramey, if I'm going to be honest with you. Let's see. So he's -3, right on the cut line. Round 1 had the crappy shots gained profile, but went nuclear low at the North Course to make the cut. I like that momentum. I guess just from like that standpoint, that kind of stands out to me. You know, somebody that had a bad day, then bounced back. You like that sort of direction that they're moving. He's going to be unowned. He's in the 6K range. So you're talking about sub 2% ownership in every contest, probably sub 1% in a few of them as well. For a 6K range play, I think you could do a whole lot worse than Chad Ramey is what I'd say. Is he one of my favorite options down there? Like, am I using him myself? I'm not. However, I see why you would play a Chad Ramey. Like, he's going to be super low owned. He's a wide range of outcomes player. And the other thing I want to look at, I guess, is what he's done recently on tour, because he's either done nothing or it's been super under the radar. So I want to go ahead and check that. Yeah, he hasn't really done anything since the Worldwide Technology, but he finished T2 at the Worldwide Technology. So let's not dismiss that and completely ignore it. When he spikes and when he plays well, he tends to chain it together and take advantage of it. Like even at the ISCO, T8 finish. Zurich's a team event, so I will throw that out. We don't have to look at that. But T5 at Valero last year, that's really solid. These are more positional courses where he's finding that kind of success, like the ISCO. Valero especially is more positional. Even Worldwide Technology Actually, no, that's a different golf course now. Worldwide Technology is at DeMonte now. That's a Bomber Fest, very similar to this week. Different type of Bomber Fest. That's a wide open Bomber Fest as opposed to more of the bomb and gouge Bomber Fest that we have this week. But yeah, man, if you're using a Chad Ramey, I'd stick to it. I could see the upside there for sure. It's nice seeing Finau back, kinda. Yeah, let's emphasize the kind of on that. Can I check his stats? This is a good golf course for him. So I was kind of thinking to myself before the week started, if he doesn't figure it out at Torrey Pines, then we've really got a big red flag on Tony Finau, and we've got to worry about him here this year. But he's playing a lot better because it makes sense. He's long off the tee. He's always played these around the green courses really well. He's got a top 10 galore at Torrey Pines over the years. Played the North course today, played particularly well. Round one gained ball striking, but lost with the short game stats. This is quintessential Tony Finau. And he did only hit 28% of his fairways. You got to improve on that at the South course. You're not going to luck sack it like you can at the North course, only hitting 20% of your fairways, but 83% of your greens, right? Even though he wasn't in the short stuff, he hit 83% of his greens. That is rather impressive. So yeah, give me some Tony Finau, man. I'm using him in my lineups because of that course history and the kind of momentum that we've seen so far this week. But now let's build a lineup, and then let's go through the prop and the betting side. So when building a lineup, we're not going to spend as much time on this as we've talked a lot through this already, and just making sure that you have enough leverage in your lineups not to duplicate yourself. And unlike yesterday, where half the field was eliminated because of the North versus the South course, everyone is in play that made the cut. So I'm actually going to go ahead and refresh this so that anyone that missed the cut is for sure eliminated on there. And the ownership's a little bit more spread out, so we don't have to leave as much salary on the table. Like yesterday, I mentioned leaving $500 to maybe even $1,000. If your lineup was a little bit chalkier, you probably don't have to do that this time. So let's start up top with a Jason Day. Good course history, decent shots gained metrics. So let's go ahead and throw him in there. Let's throw in Wyndham Clark as a high upside player. That puts us down at about $7,700 remaining for our last few spots. I like a Ryan Gerard, but maybe not as much in Showdown as I do for main slate. He's more of a consistent player than he is a spike player. And Justin Rose is super high owned. So I think I'd rather go with a Thor there or an Adam Scott. Adam Scott had really good ball striking stats. Thor is a really good course fit and a high upside player. So I think you'd go either direction. I'm going to go with a Thor there. Honestly, I was going to try and give you a reason, but it's just a coin flip. I love both of those plays. I guess it mostly comes down to the salary component and why I'd go to a Thor rather than an Adam Scott. Now we're at about $7,500 remaining, and a Jason Day is about averagely owned. A Wyndham Clark is averagely owned as well. Thor maybe a little bit above the average at the $8,100 mark, which means for our last three spots, we need at least two pivots, I would say. And if not even three, if we want to try and get a really leveraged lineup in there. So let's go ahead and try and make sure we're not taking some mega chalk towards the top end of the 7K range. So, for example, your Thagalas are going to be a little bit chalkier than some of the guys around them. You saw McGreevy in that top 20 of the ownership that I was showing you guys before. So that's why guys like Keith Mitchell that are hitting the ball well, keep showing up on those ball striking stats that we went through together, are maybe slightly better plays in this scenario, at least if you're building for the large field GPP, your 150 max sort of contest, where you want to make sure you're not duplicating yourself with a couple thousand people you're playing against, and to give yourself that extra leverage as well. So let's throw in a Keith Mitchell there. Middle end of the 7K range is the same thing. We want to make sure we're avoiding some of the chalkier players. Chris Ventura, maybe a little bit chalkier than he otherwise would be, whereas players like a Brooks Koepka could be a little bit more overlooked. Now, Brooks is cheaper than he should be at $7,700. So I still think a lot of the casuals are going to click him. But a Seabez sitting at -5, who's also a pretty good course fit for this style of golf course, would be giving you a little bit of leverage in that spot. And I actually don't think Seabez is in my pool. So I just want to throw that disclaimer out there on a Seabez, but he would be giving us a little bit of leverage at that spot. And then at $7,000 remaining, we've got two pivots in there. I'd even say that a Wyndham Clark at like average ownership, you could even qualify as a slight pivot there as well. As long as you're not playing the chalk of all the chalk at $7,000, you're not going to duplicate yourself and you're going to have some leverage there. So the only player you'd really have to worry about in that scenario would be an Eric Cole, who is at that $7,000 mark and starting at T6. He's going to be closer to that 7 to 8% mark. If you used him, you would have a marginal chance of duplicating yourself with other people in the field. Not a massive chance, but it wouldn't be zero, your duplication chance in that scenario. If you went to like a Patrick Rogers, that would make your chance nearly zero of having that duplication, going from a little bit of a chalkier piece to a leverage play at that $7,000 mark. But if you really wanted to ensure that you had next to zero chance of having any duplication risk, you'd go down to like $6,800 or $6,700 and take your favorite play down there. So for example, Tony Finau is at $6,600. That'd be leaving a whole $400 on the table, even more aggressive than the $200 mark. And you're getting somebody who we just mentioned as some of the best course history that we have in the field. And if you take a look at my portfolio from today, and I don't know if this lineup left any salary on the table, but the vast majority, actually, I know it did leave salary because I had a rule to leave at least $200 of salary in every single lineup. But some of my lineups left $500 to even $1,500 of salary on the table. I don't think you have to be as aggressive about that this time around. But if you're in the 150 max contest and you don't want to have to play a whole bunch of sub 5%ers, it does give you a lot more flexibility to play some chalk. So someone to consider if you want to go a little bit more traditional with your lineup construction and spend all of your salary, just ensure that you've got 2 sub 7%ers in there in every single lineup. But your single entries, your smaller field GPPs, you don't have to worry about the leverage nearly as much as you would in some of those other contests where you're playing against thousands and thousands of other entries. If you're in those single entries where it's just a couple of hundred entries that you're playing against, your duplication risk is just orders of magnitude lower than in those other contests. And your leverage necessity is also a lot lower than in some of those other contests. So that's it for DFS, guys. If you guys want all my projections, my entire player pool for tomorrow, you guys can download that spreadsheet from before on my PGA DFS tier. Link in the description of the video to check that out. But that's all for that side of things. I hope to see you guys at the top end of the GPPs. Now we've got a whole lot of prop stuff to go through. So let's bring up the averages. Let's deep dive all of that. I've already got a slip in on underdog that we can go through here together, and hopefully a prize picks board to go through by now, because it's been about 2 hours since the round ended. So I'm thinking that any minute now we're going to get those props to go through. If not, we'll go through underdog first, some matchups, and then go back to prize picks afterwards. But at least one slip that we're going to go here with the community tail. I'm thinking we might even do 2 this time around, maybe change up the mojo. It's been an okay week so far, but I'd really like to have a spike week on the prop side. So maybe we'll get some good karma by giving you guys a little bit of extra free exposure to tail this time around. We're going to test that theory at least. And I mean, you guys know I like to have you guys tail on a lot of the exposure that I'm entering myself anyways. So we'll go with that this time. So let's catch up on chat. Let me get a sip of this whiskey, and we're going to turn our focus to the prop and the betting side, like I said. But any DFS questions, if you do have any that we haven't gone through at this point, I will still cover those throughout the live stream. But just know for the next maybe 30 to 40 minutes on this live stream that our focus is going to be on that prop and betting side instead. So let me make this a little bit bigger. Let's catch up on the chat, and then let's get this thing rolling. So what's the max salary that I would leave on the table? Oy vey. Whiskey strong. I'll probably leave at most about $2,000 on the table. And I don't think you have to leave over $1,000, but like I could see it. If I had 4 pieces of chalk in the lineup, that's when I'd be leaving $1,000 to $2,000 on the table. But anything more than $2,000 would just be silly. There's no reason to do so. And in fact, even though I had lineups in that $500 to $1,500 left on the table range, that was only because of the golf course situation, because half the field was eliminated. A little bit more conservative about that for tomorrow. You like Super's numbers? Me too. That's why I'm taking the plunge on them for round 3. He said, McGreevy and Eric Cole, quick deep dives if I don't mind. Of course I don't mind. I got you, my man. So let's do it first. So who was Eric Cole, and who was the other one? It was McGreevy. So let's do McGreevy first, and then we'll go to Eric Cole afterwards. I love Eric Cole. He's one of my favorite players on tour. McGreevy did play the easier course today, so his shots gained are from round 1. In round 1, he lit it up. All 4 stat categories, was maybe a little bit putter dependent. Today, we had the fairway percentage of green to look at. He was about field average in both of those categories. I'll still give him a 6 out of 10, though, because he went super low. So obviously he was doing something right if he was able to post that kind of score. But without the shots gained metrics, we don't know if it was the approach play. We don't know if it was a hot putter that got him to that sort of score. So kind of unfortunate. And then Eric Cole, the other player you wanted to deep dive, same situation with the shots gained metrics. They're coming from Monday. Gained across all 4 categories. It was a little short game dependent. If you were going to nitpick that, I wish it would be a little bit more ball striking dependent. If we were in a perfect world, we're not, obviously. You don't always get what you want, like they say. Round 2, though, did not hit a bunch of fairways, yet still made 8 birdies or better. So his iron play was dialed in at the Amex. Even his driver was a lot better than we typically see. Could have driven it better, as you could see with that fairway percentage, but still is scoring excellently. So I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10 as well. I mean, shooting a -6 like he was able to in round 2 isn't done out of nowhere, but we don't know how it was done for today. So that's the only drawback on that one. He said, Torrey Pines has long rough, but it doesn't seem like players are having that much trouble with it. Do I think the rough is playing tough this week? I do think it's tough. I think it depends where you miss and also the kind of lie that you're getting. There are players, for example, on the shot tracker that from 160 yards out, we're hitting it 40 yards short of the green. So it's all situational. I think that there are spots that are trampled down by the fans that, like you said, people weren't having problems with. Whereas if you're missing on the actual golf course, only a couple yards off of the fairway, that you're getting penalized a little bit more. And it should be the opposite. Your misses where you're missing where the fans are should be penalized more than the ones that are just a couple yards off the fairway. But that's unfortunately the nuance of Torrey Pines and having a PGA Tour event there. The fans got to have them to fund the event, to have the excitement and all of that. Takes away from that competitive aspect a bit. Sipping on some Gentleman Jack yourself. Cheers. Cheers to you. This is some, what is it? 4 Roses that I'm sipping on here. So not any expensive stuff, some pretty cheap stuff, but some good stuff, I'd have to say. Do I know anything about Danny Walker? You legit watch every round in tournament and you have no idea who that is? He showed up at the Players Championship a couple years ago. Actually, he was in contention through 3 rounds. But outside of that event, has not done jack shit on the PGA Tour. So it's totally excusable for you not to know who Danny Walker is. But he's a fringe PGA Tour player that is extremely volatile. When he plays well, kind of like a Chad Ramey, you see him finishing top 5, top 10. When it's not going well, you see it going the other direction rather quickly. So valid question, but he's been around for a couple of years now. He took Thor over Rose for the round 3 matchup. What are we thinking? We'll talk through that in a few minutes after we go through some of the averages and conditions. But in general, before looking at the odds, that's going to be what we have to check before I give you my true thoughts on it. I like Thor over Rose because Rose, as that big leader, could be dealing with some pressure, probably due for some regression back to the mean. Whereas Thor was one of my favorite plays this week. He's kind of right in that hunt. He's got to be aggressive to try and make up some ground. It makes sense from that standpoint. But I'll give you some more thoughts here in just a few minutes. But let's go through these stat averages here real quickly. Good stuff. Getting easier to drink as we get through that. But round number 2 stat averages we have on the board here. The South course is the only course that we're going to have in play for tomorrow. And did include the North course averages just for completion's sake and for anyone that's making a database of data to use in the future. I know I do that myself, but I throw it out there for anyone else that might be doing that on their own end. South course, though, was a little bit easier than round number 1, which was actually a little bit surprising to me, but that had to do with a lot of the good players finally getting to the South course. So, and weirdly enough, though the stroke average was easier than round 1, look at the birdie or better average. It was much lower than you had in round 1. It was 3.42 per round. It was only 3.02 per round today. But because the winds didn't really kick up in the afternoon as much as what they did for Thursday, the bogey or worse average, rather than being closer to 3.6 per round, was only 3.23 as well. So that went down on top of the birdie average also going down. And I think we can learn something from that. Like, I don't think that's something to just like attest to like noise or variance. I think that has to do with the course firming up. The lower winds, sure, that lowers the bogey average. I can kind of agree with that one. But the birdie average going down, it was just harder to get close to these pin locations. And, I was tracking guys on Shot Tracker all day. And as we got towards the very back 9 in this afternoon, you had players that even from 105 yards or even like 85 yards on little wedge shots that guys are hitting to 5 to 10 feet all day, they were hitting 10 to even 20 feet past the hole, which is telling me that they weren't as receptive as what they were earlier in the week. And that was probably why the birdie average ended up dropping. So heading into the weekend, I do think that the cut line, getting some of the out of form players out of there, is going to help the averages a bit. You also should have a slightly easier moving day setup. Pin locations won't drop till another 10 minutes, so we don't know what those are going to look like quite yet. I'm assuming that they might be a little bit easier than rounds 1 and 2. That's an assumption, though. We're going to have to look at them before we can confirm that in either direction. All of those factors should make the golf course play a little bit easier, one would think. However, the golf course firming up, getting drier, getting bouncier as the week goes on is going to neutralize a lot of that effect, in my opinion. In fact, rather than playing maybe a half a stroke under par, which is what I would do if the golf course wasn't firming up, I have the scoring average at close to even par for tomorrow, which is still easier than the rounds 1 and 2 averages, but it's not as drastic as one might might think, because of the golf course getting a little bit bouncier, the birdie average being kept in check. I think the birdie average is going to stay in like the 3.3 to 3.5 range. I don't think it's going to get too out of hand. Again, pin locations could change that, but that's just based on what we're expecting ahead of time. Bogey or worse average, I actually think it's going to stay about the same. So that's why I think about the even par scoring average makes sense. Maybe it goes slightly down just because of the cut line, getting some of the shitty players out of there. But I have a sneaking suspicion that it's going to hold its own at this golf course. The fairway average, I think, will stay about the same. Maybe it goes slightly up to like 7.5 per round just because you have that cut line effect. And then the green regulation average, maybe that also goes slightly up to like 11 per round, but very small changes at the very most. So that's what I'm expecting course condition wise. And because we're now at all the guys playing on the harder South course, it's going to be almost entirely fades from here on out. And there could be exceptions to the rule. I don't want to completely say that I'm only entering fades for the next couple of days, but 99% of the value that we find on hard golf courses like this, and this is just for me doing this professionally for 6 years, is almost always going to be on the harder side of things. And there's a reason for that. If we go to Prize Picks, which I think should have the PGA board up now, I can show you why this is the case, is if we take 2 fades on a player, it pays 2.6x. Now, in the past, this would have been a 2.5x payout. That's fucking horseshit. I mean, it's a scam payout. It's a plus 160 payout for a 2-leg parlay just because it's correlated. But if you take 2 unders instead, it's 2.7x. Doesn't seem like a big deal. It used to be a bigger deal. It used to be 2.75x for 2 positive stance plays, and then a whole 2.5x for the 2 fades. But this is by design. They know that people out there want to take positive stance plays on players. They know that people out there don't want to root against athletes. I mean, that's just natural from humans. And I don't like rooting against athletes either. I love to see a lot of them making a whole bunch of birdies are better. Just my guys to make more birdies are better, of course, for my DFS lineups. But because the books know this, they skew the books in the positive direction. They make the lines a little bit too optimistic, knowing that people are going to take those positive stance plays, and they make the payouts for the negative stances worse, so that even though you have line value on that side of things, it looks disadvantageous. It's a psychological thing that they're trying to do with your casual bettors that are sitting on the shitter and are just trying to get some sort of exposure for that slate. It's crappy, but you're going to have to eat that on these pick'em sites if you want to have some value over the next few days. And because the payouts are going to be pretty shitty on these kind of sites, you're going to have to be really careful about the kind of value that you're entering. And that's not to say that you can't make these extremely profitable. I love fade slates. They're the ones that I have by far the most success with historically on my Patreon page. It's just that you can't like fade the entire board. Like you have to have some sort of rhyme and reasoning behind it. Fading lower tier players in their specific categories can be absolute money in this sort of a format. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the first slip that I've already entered to give you an idea of some of the exposure that I've already gone with an underdog. And then because the Prize Picks board wasn't up before, I have no idea what we have over here. We're going to break that down and maybe give you guys a second slip to enter over there. But let's start with underdog. So we're going to go with an under on fairways first, and that's going to be on Andrew Novak. He's at 7.5. Now he's 0.86 towards the under. That's crazy. When I took the under on this and Andrew Novak, he was even money on the Patreon page towards the under. By the way, if you're on the Patreon page, you would already have had the slip to tail and would have been able to enter it. But the reason why I liked this, and we're definitely going to have to give you guys another slip on Prize Picks now because they nuked the payout on this. But to go back to the averages, it was a 7.38 fairway average. And for the year, if you go to Andrew Novak's stats, he's number 138, like you can see right here. And that was for 2025. And you may say like, oh, it's just a bad year for Novak. Like, obviously, he's not that bad of a driver, right? Nope. Number 133 the year before that. And I believe if we go back to 2022, 2023, he was pretty shitty that year too. And you can see it just number 117 was below average on that season as well. So if the average is going to be below that 7.5 mark, that's why I thought it was obvious value towards the under. And the reason why it's crazy that they're bumping this sort of thing, and it just shows how bitch made the lines makers are at underdog. They have no backbone. Maybe their job's on the line based on how flamed they've been getting by us and our Prize Picks props and our props in general on underdog as well, because it's only minus 126 towards the under. It's far from a plus EV value. This was just something that I entered because I thought it was an obvious traditional analysis play that I wanted to mix in. And usually those don't bump, but I guess they bump when these underdog lines makers are on their period. So you guys are pussies. If you guys are watching this, the underdog lines makers, get a backbone, have some belief in what you're doing as your own work. Because you posted those lines about 20 minutes before I entered them myself. what changed in 20 minutes where you had to completely change the odds of that line, other than me posting it on my Patreon page and people tailing it myself. It just shows weakness from your side. Again, I'm speaking to the underdog lines makers when I say this, and stop being pussies and stick behind your lines for once. I mean, you can do this all you'd like. It just makes me look better as a handicapper when you go out there and you make it much worse odds in that direction. But I don't know. I don't know how they sleep in beds at night knowing that they've got no confidence behind what they're doing. But maybe guilt tripping them will make them stand behind it a little bit more because, like I said, it's as bitch made as it possibly gets. Let's look at the Sam Stevens line. Oh, yeah. They ended up bumping that one as well. We also got this one at even money. It was also not even a plus EV value towards the over. So that's why I think it's warranted to call them bitch made, because it's as spineless as I've ever seen for a website to do that. But you can see Stevens there is minus 125 towards the over, far from a plus EV value. But with me expecting around an even par to maybe even slightly over par scoring average, I'll take him to shoot even par or worse. He's, a slightly above average player on the PGA Tour, but he did lose strokes in the ball striking categories today. So just to show you that, Sam Stevens lost on approach, lost around the green, and lost putting. Did have a really good off the tee day. He hit 71% of his fairways, one of the best numbers of anyone in the field. And even then, he only shot even par. It would have gone over that sort of line. So that's why I'm taking that. I'm not expecting him to drive the ball nearly as well as what he was able to in round number 2. And to go back to the Novak one, Novak did hit 9 of his fairways in round number 1. So I'll show you guys that going back to the very first day. But if you go through the shot trails for Novak on the first day, there were like 5 different tee shots that were hits. They were actually like fairways hit by 1 to 2 yards. So I would expect some of those to go the other way the next time around. A below average driver with the 7.3 at average is, I think, a pretty big no-brainer there. So I guess underdog giving me my flowers, giving me my respect on bumping those sort of lines. But stop being pussies, man. Like, if I was setting lines for these sports books and I saw some like action coming in on them, all I would think to myself was like, oh, wow, like that guy obviously thinks that's value in that direction. But I wouldn't second guess myself immediately, right? Like I'd go, I put the time in. I know where I expect these averages to be. I know how to handicap these players. I'm going to post the projections that I believe in. There would be no way in hell that I would be doing that. And maybe it's not even the lines makers that are doing it. It's the trading team that is doing it based on my action. Either way, whoever you are doing that on underdog, you're bitch made, and get a spine and stop being an absolute little pussy is all I've got to say to you out there. And now let's go through the prize picks side. So we've got the strokes lines up, the birdie or better lines. By the way, prize picks does not bump nearly as much as what we have on underdog. So they're a little bit better in my book from that perspective. By the way, guys, if you guys want to take all the exposure I'm entering as I'm entering them, you guys can find that on the Patreon page. This slip was posted over there before I went live on here, so you wouldn't have been able to catch this for a 2.85x payout. Unfortunately, now after they nuked the payouts, it's 2.3x and pretty much unplayable. So I would just say at the plus 130 mark, that's what a 2.3x payout is. Don't play that. It's just not worth it after those sort of changes. What you can learn from us going through that slip, though, is that some unders on fairways might make sense with the average plummeting in that department and the course firming up a bit. And then also from the over on stroke side, non-elite players at 71.5 strokes are going to make a lot of sense for fades as well. So let's go through prize picks and see what the heck we can find, because they're likely going to have a bigger board to go through as well. And I want to catch up on chat, see what's going on over there, and then continue this thing ourselves. He said he took Thor over Rose for the matchup. It's minus 124, you were saying. Yeah, minus 124 seems pretty reasonable. I was hoping it would have been minus 110, even money coin flip, if we're being honest, but I think that's decently playable. Do I have a Discord? I do, but I'm making a new one, James. So I haven't really been sending out any invites this week because I'm setting up a new one for the next week or so. So stay tuned there. Reason for that is I changed my pricing. I have a Discord with like 300 plus people in it. And I don't feel like having to go through it person by person and kicking all the people that aren't set up for 2026. So I'm just going to make a new Discord. We're going to do it that way. So, hey, I know it sounds lazy, but it's the more efficient way to go about it. So yeah, stay tuned for that, James. Is Mav becoming a must-play in California now? He's incredible in Cali. Thoughts on him for round 3? Yeah, he's good on Poa. I think that's the reason for that, and just becoming a better player in general. I've been playing him a lot on this West Coast swing, and if you want to continue that, I'm not going to give you too much pushback. Thoughts on him for round 3? He will be a bit chalky because he's at the top end of the leaderboard, but that could be warranted with the kind of track record that you were talking about. So yeah, he's an okay play in my opinion. He's getting the ownership, unfortunately. That's why he's not a great play. He said spot on. Okay. He said, it should be illegal for Underdog and Prize Picks to change their original lines. If they fuck it up, that's their fault, not ours. It's not even just that. They'll post lines and then refund them after the fact, calling them obvious mistakes on stuff that is perfectly reasonable to happen on the PGA Tour. So, yeah, it's I don't know. I'm not going to go through the full rant now, but them being called like DFS contests, and I'll put DFS in quotes, as opposed to gambling, is the biggest scam in human history. And I'm sure that won't last. I'm sure that will get shut down at some point, and the stock market value of those sites is just going to go to absolute zero. For now, they're money makers because they could scam customers like that, and it's illegal, but that won't last forever. There's just zero way. Thoughts on Nap for tomorrow? His line's 71.5. And you like the under, you think? 71.5. Yeah, I don't know if I can get behind that, Antonio. I was actually even looking at that towards the over until I saw Sam Stevens. I could see some of the unders on like your Jason Days. I could see it on like some of your unders on your Keegan Bradleys at 71.5 strokes. I don't know if I could get there for a Nap. Nap is only making his second start of the year. He didn't play a lot during the fall because he had some personal stuff going on. So I might look to some of those elite tier players instead. But if you're talking about at like plus money odds, if you're getting like a really good line on it, that changes that for me. But at even money or on a pick'em site, I'd probably find some other players. But you'll have to let me know on that. He said, Luke, with the goated rant there, give him hell, brother. I mean, it's just true though, right? Like if you're going to post lines, stick behind them unless you're an absolute pussy, right? Let's go through these lines and figure out what we've got, because I want to give us a little bit of a community tale. And you can see Sam Stevens is available at that 71.5 number. So you could do that. And is Novak up at 7.5? Because if he is, we could just make that the tail, but it looks like he's not up there at 7.5. So yeah, can't tell the exact slip over there, but maybe we can find something similar that makes sense. Let's dive in. I should have poured more whiskey. I should have known I got through that while we're here on live stream. In fact, I might even go pour a little bit more while we're on here on the live stream, because it'll only take me a second or two. But let's get through at least this strokes board before I go out there and do that. So look at this, like elite tier guys like Thor at 71.5, Brooks Koepka's at that number. Like I would just prefer like somebody like that, or even a Siwoo Kim over a Jake Knapp at that same sort of projection. I would say that this Prize Picks board looks a little bit sharper than the underdog side, just because they don't have as many scrubs at that 71.5 number. Well, let's look at birdies are better too. So I think the average would be about 3.5 per round, which means that there could be over or under value depending on the kind of projections that we're getting. And based on what I'm seeing on here so far, it looks like there could be over and under value to attack. Like for example, Tom Kim, a below average birdie maker, he's at 3.5 birdies, yet you have Rasmus Nørgaard Peterson, he's a very aggressive birdie maker. You've got Rasmus Højgaard at that same sort of projection. Michael Thorbjornsen, that's also a pretty good birdie maker at that same sort of number. I know I said I wanted to take almost all fades, and that is what I want to do for most of my plays for tomorrow. But there could even be some positive stances that make sense in there. And then they've got 3 bogeys or worse for a handful of your elite tier players. Sounds about right, with probably about a 3.25 average. And then the fairway lines, these could be a little bit high if we can find some below average driving accuracy guys that are at 7.5. Let's see what we have. Thor actually was above average last year. Surprising for somebody that hits the ball as long as he does. Yeah, they did pretty good with these boards. They took off the guys like Novak that were below average driving accuracy guys. It didn't post them, maybe because they saw what I posted on my Patreon page before. But I'd say based on what I'm seeing here so far, that we could even take some overs on birdies. Like the pricing here seems pretty favorable on a few of the players that we're going through. In fact, I want to deep dive some of the sportsbook lines on a few of these players. So Rasmus kind of stands out. We'll look at Thor too. Thor's got to be aggressive to try and make up some ground to the rest of the field. So let's see where Draftkings has these guys. So Thor Bjornsen's minus 138. Okay, I guess that's good to know. We can look at Keegan Bradley too. It was another one I wanted in the line shop. He's minus 134. Who else was it? It was Rasmus we wanted to look at. Can look at his brother too, Nikolai. Might as well look at both of them at the same time. Nikolai's minus 146. Even bigger value towards the over. What's Rasmus? Minus 144 as well. So both over that plus EV mark. So this, at least to me, seems like Prize Picks is saying that they don't agree with the DraftKings odds, that they think it's going to play harder than what DraftKings is accounting for, which I agree with. Like those minus 144s, minus 150s towards the over feel a little bit too optimistic based on where I would project the field, especially after just having the 3.02 average that we had for round number 2. So the pin locations could change that. And in fact, now that we made it this far into the live stream and we're past 10 p.m., let me bring up Twitter and let me see if they posted those pin locations, because I mean, that's the last factor that we need to break down here. And it could arguably be the biggest factor because it is a moving day setup. So let's go ahead and do our due diligence on that side. So I'm going to go ahead and share this. We're going to bring up the leaderboard as well. And we're going to go hole by hole, comparing the pin locations from rounds 1 and 2 to what we're getting for tomorrow. So I'm going to get a little bit of whiskey in the cup because this is going to take some time, and I wanted to do that anyways. And we'll be back. We're going to go through these pin locations, see exactly how they set up. I still like the fades that I mentioned on the underdog side before. The Sam Stevens over still makes a lot of sense. But before we go out there and add even more exposure to the docket, I would like to know exactly what we're getting ourselves into. So we're going to do that, go hole by hole, show you guys exactly what we're dealing with. And this is the first time that we're doing this year. It's the West Coast swing, so these pin locations aren't dropping till a little bit later. But it's Friday night. We're drinking some whiskey and we're spending some extra time on the live stream. So we might as well do our full due diligence together. So I'll be right back. Give me about 30 seconds to get a little refill and we'll go ahead and go through these. I'll bring in my cat in here too. I need my buddy in here. Bring in one of my cats in here too. 1 second. This is Nugget that I have here. It's one of my 2 cats. She was scratching at the door before, so I figured I'd let her in while I had the door open and stuff. But she's a chiller. She's a fat cat. She's lazy, stupid as hell. My other cat's really thin and really smart, but it's good having both of them. You've got the one that's just kind of good hang around that won't do anything, won't annoy you whatsoever. And then I've got the other one that's like Isaac Newton at the same time, that can open doors, that knows how to like knock things off of shelves to annoy me. So it's good having both of them. They're like yin and yang to do that. But let's go through these. So hole number 1 is going to be on the middle left side of the screen complex, about where my cursor is right now. I would say the pin location is a bit easier than what you had for the first couple of days, just because it's not tucked over this bunker now. I mean, you can kind of see it with the Justin Rose shot. If you were coming out of the rough to this front, or I should say middle right pin location, you didn't have enough room to really get it close. Whereas now that it's on this left side, you're going to have all of that green to run the shot up. And even if you hit it into the rough, I don't think it's an easy shot to hit it close and to make a birdie, but you're at least it's going to be a somewhat realistic outcome to go out there and do so. So that's a slightly easier pin location. Next up, we have 2, which is on the very front right. This is also an easier pin location. It was up on this little bit of a shelf with a false front in front of it. So now that it's on this little bit of a low area, actually kind of near this 2, just a little bit in front of it, it's going to be a little bit more accessible, and you're going to see a higher birdie rate there. Let's go up to the next hole. Next hole is 3, is on the bottom right. This is also an easier pin. Okay, I can already tell you what they're doing here, right? This golf course is set up exponentially easier over the first 3 holes. Now, is that going to hold for the rest of the golf course? We'll see. The reason why I say that is you can see 3 in this bottom right low area is down in this bowl. You're going to have a little bit of a backstop to help you, even a little bit of a side slope towards the left. And if you take a look at the shot trails from today, in fact, I'm actually going to do that on here. Let's get rid of the video. That's not what we want to see, but let's click compare shots, right? You have people that hit it near the hole, fine. That's always going to be the case. But where did they hit it if they weren't hitting it near the hole? Right at the pin location for tomorrow. And that's because of all the slopes that were around it. So I would expect this to be peppered in there to be a ton of birdies at hole 3. And honestly, all 3 holes so far look set up easier than what we've seen so far. 4 is on the front left. This is also a slightly easier pin location. It's on a low area, and it's also at the bigger portion of the green. Let's go to 5 next. 5 is going to be at the middle left. It's also an easier pin. Actually, I would actually say this is about the same kind of pin location as rounds 1 through 2. I was tempted to say easier because it wasn't tucked in the very back right corner, which upon first glance does look like a harder pin location. But because it's on a high area here in the middle left, it does add a little bit of sneaky difficulty. I mean, you can see that slope there that adds a little bit of that like false front effect to that pin location. And then you've also got a slope to the little bit of a right side of the pin location, which does the same thing, just taking the ball to the right as opposed towards the front. Let's go to 6, really easy par 5. It's in the back left, so this still will be the easiest hole on the golf course, but the pin location is not as easy as what it was for the first couple days. This front pin is the easiest by far, that hole, so it's going to be a little bit more of an earned birdie at hole number 6, it looks like. Next up, we have 7, which is in the very back right corner. This is a harder pin location than the first couple of days. There's a bit of a slope bisecting this green, which makes it a little bit of a tier in this back corner. And it's more of a carry over that bunker too. So this and 6 are the only hard pin locations that we've seen so far. Let's go to 8 next. 8 is in the very front left corner. This is the easiest pin location that we have at the hole. It was actually pretty easy to the back right as well because you had some room to work with. But now that it's in a low area and that you have this backstop to work with, you're going to see even more birdies at 8. Let's go to 9 next. And 9 is going to be on the very front side. It's a par 5. So I would actually say that this is about the same difficulty as rounds 1 and 2. When it gets hard is when it's on this back left corner and when you have to get over the slope. I'm sure they're going to use that on Sunday, so we can look forward to that for the next round. But at this front corner, it's going to be a decent like 30% birdie rate like we saw for rounds 1 and 2. Maybe it goes up a little bit because of the form of the guys that made the cut. Next up, you have 10, which is on the middle right side. They are going off of both 1 and 10 tomorrow, so there will be people that are starting on this side. 10 looks a little bit easier than what we had for today, just because it's not in that back left corner, which with firm greens can be kind of tricky to get to with a wedge. Let's go to 11 next. 11's a long par 3, and that's a front left pin location. They're probably going to tip it out again. They tipped it out for days 1 and 2 as well. And the reason why I say they're almost surely going to tip it out is this is by far the easiest pin at the hole. You've got a backstop to work it off of. You don't have to carry it over the bunker to get it close into a very small portion of the green back there. It was almost impossible to hit it towards the flag and get it to hold the green. Whereas over here, you could easily see some birdies at 11. I shouldn't say easily. It's still going to be a long, hard par 3, but a lot easier than it was for the first couple of days. 12 is a very back left pin. This is a tough one. So this is like the third hard hole that we've seen so far. It's a longer shot and it's more protected by this bunker on the left side. So 12, normally one of the hardest holes out there, was not the case for days 1 and 2. It should return to that high difficulty now that it's in that back left corner. Let's go to 13 next. 13 is a middle right pin location. It's a long par 5. It's about the same difficulty as rounds 1 and 2 though. Rounds 1 and 2, it was on the shelf on the left side, where you can see that slope kind of bisects and takes everything down towards the middle. Now it's on this right side shelf. So maybe your faders, at least right-handed faders, will have a little bit of a better chance of getting there now. But other than that, draw versus fade bias, there's not really any difference from that pin location over to this side. Let's go to 14 next. So 14 is a middle left pin location. Oh, wait. What are you doing, Nug? My cat over there is just chilling. You can go elsewhere. You don't have to sit there and just like not move. Cat thinks I like punished it or something. I was bringing her in here because I thought she wanted in here. 14's on the middle left. This is also a much easier pin location than what we had for the first couple of days. This pin was over this bunker and it's towards a very small portion of the screen. Now it's in the middle left. It's unprotected by bunkers and you've got all this room to try and get it close. So let's say you miss the fairway at 14. You're actually going to have a chance to try and run it up to that pin location. Then we got 15, which is in the very back right corner. It's about where my cursor is now. It's a harder pin than days 1 and 2. So I think this is the 4th or maybe the 5th pin that looks a little trickier. Reason why it's harder is you've got this slope towards the middle of the green that bisects that one. Next up, we got 16, back left pin. This is another tricky one. I will say though, there's a chance they move the tee box on this one. They had it tipped out in the normal tee box over here. What they do on moving day a lot of times is they use one of these 2 pins. This location over here, or maybe this one where they actually have the signage already up, which makes this back left pin still the hardest pin that you get at this hole, but it's a lot more accessible than it is when it's playing like 230 yards. So we'll see what they do at 16, but that's like a 4th or a 5th harder hole that we've seen so far. 17 on the front right. This is an easier pin location. It's below this slope and at a low area. Today it was on the right side as well, but it was a little bit on top of this slope as opposed to on the bottom half. So that makes it a little bit easier for moving day. And then finally, 18's on the back left. It looks harder than today, but it's actually probably about the same difficulty. The reason why I say that is that you have more room over the water to get close to it, which means that people are going to be more aggressive with their wedge shots in. So I think the scoring average at 18 is going to be pretty similar to the first couple days. But overall, based on what we've seen with these pin locations, and I'm glad we went through them because it changes my tune on what we're going to do. It's really easy. It's like a really, really, really easy Torrey Pine setup. So to go back to the averages, I think this could be 3.5 plus birdies per round for tomorrow. So with that kind of adjustment being made, I actually think there's a lot of overs on birdies are better now on Prize Picks that make plenty of sense to consider. And maybe even some of those like minus 140s, the minus 148s that we were looking at before would make sense to go out there and mix in. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at some of those guys that were plus EV overs, and then we're going to find the ones that are hitting the ball the best, because we know that these sports books are not the end all be all. They don't know exactly what's going to happen. So let's make sure we're doing some traditional analysis as well. So we got Rasmus Njergaard Peterson, great stats at the South Course the first day. Also made 5 birdies or better with the harder setup. That could be one of the ones that we mix in. And based on what we were going through before, that was one of the very first ones I wanted to get to. So let's go ahead and throw him in there. There's 2 Rasmuses that made sense, actually. Okay, if I could spell Rasmus right, it'd make it a little bit easier to find it. But there's the main one I wanted to search. And what were his odds? That's the other thing I wanted to look at. Yeah, he was minus... Actually, he's about even money towards either side. Like, I don't know if I agree with that. Like, he's as good, if not a better birdie maker than the Højgaard twins when they were on the DP World Tour. Oh, this is a situation where, like, I just don't agree with the books. But maybe I should be prudent, try and make sure that they're plus EV plays and they make sense from the traditional analysis perspective. So we're going to do that. We're going to check ourselves and maybe do it that way. I like the over on Thor Bjornsson, at least if the shots gained metrics check out. Let's take a look at that. So Thor Bjornsson, round 1 was actually gaining across all 4 categories, so can't really say that he was a ball striking popper. But round 2, he hit 83% of his greens. That's a good sign. Only 35% of his fairways, so could have done better there. But maybe he's somebody we take for that category. And then who else? We can go with a Brooks, maybe Siwoo Kim. I'm kind of curious where the odds are on those two. So Siwoo's the minus 128. What's Brooksy at? Minus 138. So yeah, he would be a plus EV value. And he obviously hit the ball well round 1. He played round 1 at the South Course, and he gained ball striking but lost in the ball, putting category out of the 4. That could be a lean that we take. I'm not necessarily against that. But I do want to make it some of the best birdie or better percentage players that we can. Truth be told, Brooks seems like a little bit of a loose cannon as well, so maybe he's not my favorite play for that. But let's go back to 2025. Let's plug in Thor. Yeah, he was the number 8 birdie maker on tour. Let's see if they have a Knapp, a Mitchell. Yeah, see if they have a Knapp, Mitchell, or a Cootie line. Because they were top 10 in birdie percentage last year, so that would make sense. They do have a Keith Mitchell one. Let's look at Knapp and then Cootie. Do they have one for Knapp? Knapp's at 4, actually. He's already bumped to that. And let's look at Cootie. They don't have any. Cootie may have actually missed the cut for all I know. Let's look at Keith Mitchell, though. Does he have a sportsbook line? He doesn't, but Adam Scott does. And I'm curious what the matchup odds are on those two. So what's Mitchell's 3-ball odds? He's the second favorite just behind an Adam Scott. Adam Scott was only minus 134, though. So maybe that one's not the best plus EV value in comparison. Just because if Scott's only minus 134 and he's favored over Mitchell, you'd have to think that it's not a 1-to-1 comparison because obviously strokes versus birdies are better. But it helps us out with this rough estimate for sure. Let's look at Keegan. Keegan might not be a bad one to line shop on here. I also want to look at his shots gained metrics too. Minus 134. That's half decent. He was on round 2 at the South Course. Let's see. So he gained to every category but the putter. And he made 4 birdies or better despite the harder pin setup. I think we found what we're going to do. We're going to take these two. They're both on Boston Common Golf. So 2 teammates playing in the simulator league that we'll take for this 2.7x payout, I think. Yeah, 2.7x that we're getting on those 2. But close to plus EV odds on both of them. Michael Thor Bjornsson actually is a little bit over that plus EV line, but Keegan's getting pretty close to it. But after the pin locations that we saw, especially with next to no wind, your good players, the guys that are in form, are going to have opportunities to make some birdies. It's just whether they can make those 5 to 10 footers and get to the 4 birdie or better mark that we're hoping for. And that'll be the first slip that we're taking for tomorrow. So for the rest of the slips that I'm taking for moving day, you guys can find that on my Patreon page. Golf prop and betting tiers, how you guys get access to all of that. We'll give you all the underdog slips as I enter them, also all the prize pick slips before any of those bumps end up happening. And also you can get all the stat averages that I'm posting for my members. I post weather reports for all of them as well, so you can do all of your research. And on top of just giving you the the actual exposure that I'm entering. I also give you all the rhyme and reasoning behind the thought process so they become a better of golf in the process. And for the year, we're already up over 10 units so far, so pretty solid start to 2026. Maybe not what I wanted from my results today. I could have done a little bit better. We're a couple half cashes rather than full cashes away from profit on the day. But for the year, still into the positive, and we're looking to add on top of that here for the rest of the season. So for the rest of the exposure, you guys can find that over there on that side of things. But yeah, after looking through these pin locations, birdies are better, the safe bet to take for positive stance plays, because to go back to the stroke average, maybe we slightly adjust that too to like half a stroke under par to like an even par scoring average. But there are so many blow up holes out there. You hit a ball into the canyon, that's an easy double, triple bogey right there, that it just feels a little bit safer to go after these birdie or better lines. That way, in case somebody makes 3 to 4 bogeys on top of that, they could still cash you out on their prop. And, even if it's only like 2 or 3 bogeys that they're making, and one of them's like a double or a triple, you just want to avoid that sort of chaos if you can. So that's why I looked at those rather than looking at strokes. I kind of want to look at that Goddard stroke. So Goddard's a really good golfer. Like if there's anyone I'd take for the under at that, it might be a Goddard. And you can see he's minus 134 towards the under. I might have to line shop something like that after I get off the live stream. There could be a couple unders at 71.5 that also makes sense. But for the most part, it's going to be a lot of birdie or better props that you're seeing me playing. But now let's go through the matchups. I do want to take a look at that side of things before we hop off the live stream here. Any questions, of course, you guys can throw that in the live chat as well. Hard Rock Bet won't have these posted for the next couple hours. So we're just going to look at them at Draftkings for now, which means that I'm not guaranteed to necessarily be playing all these myself. For example, last night we had the Max Homa one that we went over on the live stream. That was plus 205. The odds were a lot worse on Hard Rock Bet. So I actually did not enter that Max Homa 3-ball. Ended up being a good thing because he did not win that 3-ball. So maybe I lucked out in that being the case. But I will go through the board and see what's at least value on the DraftKings side, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have access to yourselves. But let's catch up on chat. Then let's cap this off with trying to find some value there. He said, drink out the bottle, show the prize, fix use box. It's not an expensive bottle or else I would. And if I did that, I'd be drinking too much. So you can see, dude, look at the cup there. It's small a pour as humanly possible. So we're not going to go that crazy. Whole locations are out. Yep, we went through those. I appreciate the heads up, though. Fanduel has a lot of players at 2.5 birdies. The over is juice, but still kind of crazy. Yeah, that's them saying that they think the average is going to be close to what it was today. Pin locations dictate otherwise, but I kind of see what they are thinking. Random question, but I saw my stakes on Twitter. What kind of cut are those and where do I go to get them? So those are from a local butcher of mine. He owns his own shop here in Delray Beach, so I was able just to go get them there. Those were 2 bone-in ribeyes. They were actually on sale, super cheap, but I don't know why they were on sale. They were awesome when I had them, but I completely miscooked them. So that was on me. That was user error. I did not have the butter that I needed to properly baste them. And the way that I cook steaks is I flash sear them on both sides pretty severely too. They're almost like hockey pucks by the time I take them out, but they're not fully cooked at that point because I only put them on the actual frying pan to sear when it's fully hot. It's like steaming, scalding hot at that point. So then I normally take garlic butter afterwards, and then I baste it in garlic butter to get it up to the proper temperature. But I didn't have the garlic butter for those 2 steaks. So I just had to cook them on the sear. So they were really burnt, actually, when it was all said and done, and they weren't completely cooked. So unfortunate. Appreciate that you're liking the live stream, Rushing Guard. Smash the like button if you guys haven't already. I don't impress you. No one needs me for your lineups. Hey, you're watching the live stream, so I'm doing something right if you're watching the live stream. But hey, man, there's always going to be haters for anyone that's doing anything right. So you can go out there and kick rocks. I'll just say that we've had a bunch of winners in the chat for the last couple of weeks. We've had 4 or 5 GPP takedowns in 2025 already. So, hey, if you're not impressed by that, that's fine, right? Maybe winning money, taking down GPPs, winning plus 10 units through 2 weeks isn't impressive to you. There are plenty of other shows where you can go out there and lose money, right? Because obviously that's what impresses you, right? The people that have all the big fancy editors and all the cool graphics, right? Is that what impresses you? Or do you get impressed by actual results? I know what impresses me. I know what a lot of people watching this live stream get impressed by is actually winning money and having a good process. But hey, if you want cool stories, if you want cool production crews, then you can go to some of those other live streams and do that. I just don't give a fuck. I mean, I think you can tell, right? And I think maybe you're one of the lines makers, right? That's saying that in the chat because of how much I was schooling you guys before. Hey, if you're a butthurt little bitch and you get mad because I call you a pussy for changing your lines, don't come into my live chat and try and be a little hating bitch, because it just makes you look like even more of a coward. So that's all I'll say. That guy's banned for life, and he'll be kicking rocks because he won't be in this live chat anymore. Eric Cole for the over at 3.5 birdies is plus 125. The under is minus 163. Yeah, Eric Cole's too inconsistent for me, man. I love Eric Cole. He's one of my favorite players on tour. So I'm not going to give you too much pushback on it, but let's just keep it real. Eric Cole's an average player at best in this sort of field, probably below average player. So if you think the average is going to be like 3.5 birdies or better per round, maybe that's not a terrible take at plus 125, but I don't think it's like the best thing you've ever seen. You said this Jack dude is working for Prize Picks. Dude, that's what I'm saying. Like, dude, we've had a great year so far. We're plus 10 units into the profit on props and betting already. Two weeks into the year. That's 10% on your entire bankroll that you've already made so far. That's a yearly stock market average. So obviously we're doing well there. We've done solid over the DFS side as well with multiple takedowns in multiple weeks. Yeah, the guy's full of shit. It's just funny. Hey, like, and no matter who you are, like, you can be freaking Mike Trout. You could be Scotty Scheffler. Scotty Scheffler has haters out there, right? Like, it's just how people are. They're just fucking weirdos out there. And trust me, I get it. I've seen a lot of the weirdos. It's what you see on the internet these days. Unavoidable, unfortunately. Keith Mitchell, Adam Scott, and Tony Finau for the 3-ball. Let's look at the odds on that, right? Because we haven't found a 3-ball value quite yet, but I'm definitely taking suggestions from the chat. So you got Scott as the big favorite. I'm not ever going to bet him as a big favorite against especially two players like Mitchell and Finau that have a pulse. And Mitchell hit the ball well today. He's also a short game regression candidate, so maybe he's somebody that you consider at the plus 176 mark. And then Finau, though, that's a big number to be hanging on somebody that's got an elite tier course history like Finau, and then also really hit the ball well in round one and then lost the strokes putting. So I would say if you're going on anyone in this group, it would be a Tony Finau for me. Like, Mitchell seems like a decent play, but he doesn't have the big long shot odds. The big long shot odds are on Tony Finau, who historically, he's the second best player of this group. Adam Scott's a borderline Hall of Famer. Tony Finau's not quite at that level, but he's clearly the second best player in that group, and he's being given pretty much no shot at plus 235. So, in fact, if I could get something close to the plus 235 myself, I probably won't bet that for a full unit bet myself, but that's more like a half unit bet that I'd play, and I'll sprinkle in a few like plus 200s or more at that half unit mark and get some exposure that way. But yeah, that's why I would lean on that one. So don't attack any unders for birdies. I still like a few, like if you're looking at shitty golfers. So for example, like we took Pavon today. It worked out. We cashed on that at 3.5. Hughes, Tom Hoagie for round one. He was a below average birdie maker. Totally fine taking unders if it's those sort of players, but not if it's somebody that's an above average player like Keegan Bradley. A few of the guys that we took for the overs in that kind of a slip, it's a case-by-case example. If we had hard pins, though, rather than taking those two overs that you saw for our community tail, we would have been slamming unders on birdies instead. So I don't think it's my favorite lean at this point, Golf Kid, but you could still find some that make sense. You've never seen a ribeye steak before? Big deal. I've seen ribeye steaks before. What are you saying, dude? I've had plenty of ribeyes before. It was a bone-in ribeye. It was just a normal piece of steak that I got. No one's acting like it's anything special. It's a good call on Pavon today. I appreciate that, David. So glad I came across the channel the other day. Great content and insight. I appreciate that, my dude. You enter 12 to 15 showdown lineups a slate. How tight should your player pool be? Yeah, 12 to 15 is pretty tight. I'd probably go with closer to like 10 players, maybe 12 players at most in that scenario. You still have to have a decent amount because you're not just going to have like 8 to 10 players in 12 to 15 lineups. But yeah, like 10 to 12 is probably the sweet spot for that sort of scenario. But I've got to say, I don't have a bunch of experience only entering 10 to 15 lineups. I normally only have either a couple, like 4 to 5 lineups that I'm entering, or I go with a whole bunch, like 150, which I go with in most cases. So that's what I would say on that one before. This guy that says you've never seen a ribeye steak before, bro, by the way, I cook steak 4 times a week. That's like literally all I cook. That's all I know how to cook. So obviously I've seen a ribeye before. You're just a dumb fuck, huh? You think I've never seen a ribeye before? Jeez Louise, you're a low IQ fuck. He said, Luke got kicked off the Big Boy Show for good reason. He'll talk all. Look at this guy. Got all these haters in chat. I got kicked off the Big Boy Show. By the way, let's talk about that. The Big Boy Show that has less views than mine, that has less likes than mine, and that I was only doing because I was doing a favor for somebody that I was really close with. And that is no longer associated with that channel. So yeah, we'll call him the Big Boy channel that gets 30 views, 30 likes, that gets half the channel, half the traction that I do over here. And by the way, I got to say, I make a lot more money now than what I did when I was doing the stuff for them before. So yeah, you can say that it's a downgrade. It's not. It's an upgrade. I get to work on my own brand over here on my own channel. And look at that. It's probably the same guy making multiple accounts. Just the lowest of the low on the totem pole, right? Online trolls that rather than hanging with their friends and family on a Friday are online trolling people with nothing better to do with their own lives. So trust me, that reflects a lot more on yourself than it does on me. And you know what I do on Fridays and Saturdays is I deep dive the boards. I try and find value for my members. I actually go through DFS lineups and strategy for all my members. What do you see from all those other sites, by the way? The big boys that you call yourself, 10-minute videos. What else do you see? Half-assed channels, half-assed content where the actual people that are running those websites aren't even posting the content this time of year. Yeah, you're full of fucking shit, you little troll in the chat. You can say what you want. You can act like you're grandstanding from the high grounds, but you're the fucking clowns in this scenario. Paying more for less content on what you think is the bigger website. Yeah, just because you pay more doesn't mean that it's better. So go ahead and take that, you fucking loser. Hopefully you can pay much for all that content and continue to lose and get that half-assed content. That's not what we're about here. So enjoy your ban. You're not welcomed back. And respectfully, I hope you lose every lineup and every single bet that you place this week. You're seeing all these new fuckers with these dumbass names. That's what I mean. It's literally the same people just making new accounts. Also, I have a sneaking suspicion that maybe people as a part of that website are telling people to do that. If that's the case, then the people that are doing that are even more bitch made than those people themselves. So that's all I'll say on that. He said, look at this. You got this guy in multiple accounts in the chat. All right, we'll just ban all of them, man. All right, let's go through this board and find some matchup value. And if that dumb fuck keeps making accounts in the chat, I mean, there's just a butthurt he is. Now I'm almost convinced that it's somebody that works for that company, because who's that butthurt other than the person that's stealing their business and taking the attention away from them, right? Like, obviously, I've hit a nerve if they've done this and they're trying to make multiple accounts to shit talk me. Jeez Louise, bro. Just make a better product or be better yourself rather than trying to tear other people down. That's a much more constructive thing to do long term. All you're doing is speaking into the wind, by the way. It does not impact me whatsoever. I've been doing this for 6 to 7 years. I've seen plenty of trolls. I've seen thousands of them over doing this in my life. Maybe it impacts you. It's not going to impact me. I'm not thin-skinned like a little bitch like you are. But let's go through the rest of this board. So we're mostly looking for long shots on these 3-ball bets. I'm not going to be somebody that's betting close to like plus 120, plus 130 very often. So let's see what we can find. We already mentioned the Tony Finau one. That was a pretty sharp take from the guy in chat that was looking at that. This Castillo versus John Kiefer, if these were closer to like plus 220, they might be a little bit more playable. But Stevens should be the favorite as the best form player out of those three. Maybe slightly tempting to want to go to a John Kiefer there, but that's not something that I'll do myself. Not anything on that one I like. But let's see what else we have. Mr. Vanderlaan, been pretty impressive his first couple starts on the PGA Tour so far. That whiskey is pretty strong, if I must say so myself. It makes your hairs go up on your arm, that's for damn sure. You got a Thompson versus a Rain in Harada. Harada, I've seen some good things on. A lot of people think he's going to be a pretty good player, but he's yet to really show it yet on the PGA Tour at this stage. Matt McCarty at over plus 200 is also interesting, but he's in a death row of a group against a Cam Young and a Chris Gotterup. And got a Gim versus a Jaeger and a Ewerts. That's probably a stay away from me. Haotong versus Novak and a Bachal. Yeah, Bachal's a stay away from me. He's been either really good on rounds or complete dog shit the next day. And Haotong or Novak, I guess, would be somewhat interesting at both at plus 140. But yeah, that's probably a stay. Maybe even a Haotong at plus 140 would be the bet there. But I'm not normally betting the favorites in a lot of these 3-ball matchups. We go to the next one, a bunch of guys at plus 160, plus 200. That's pretty scam odds, if I'd say so myself. Let's see. Hughes has decent course history, at least when it was played at the U.S. Open here. But regular Farmers Insurance Open hasn't been as kind to him. Rasmus Nørgaard Peterson's an extremely high pedigree player against a group like Knapp and Hideki, though. It's just another murderer's row. A lot of these guys I want to bet on are just in really tough groupings for tomorrow. So maybe the head-to-head markets on Hard Rock Bet will make a little bit more sense. On Hard Rock Bet, we're able to bet them head-to-head, and a lot of times the odds are different than what you'll find on DraftKings and Fanduel. So I'll be deep diving that a little bit later on, and we'll probably be able to find a little bit of value there that makes sense. Højgaard versus McCarty and Ramey. McCarthy at plus 150 is at least somewhat tempting, but I don't know. I'm normally looking for around plus 200 on a lot of these underdog bets that I'm taking. I'm looking for guys that have 33 to maybe 40% win equity on those bets that I'm looking to place. Not a whole bunch that really stuck out, if I'm going to be honest with you. Like, there were a couple leans that I could see myself playing for maybe like half a unit, like this Tony Finau one that we went through. I'm going to actually go back and maybe click in a couple other ones that would have made a little bit more sense. Let's see, it was mostly the ones towards the beginning that were a little bit better. Yeah, the Finau one. Yeah, I guess that's it, really. There were a couple other ones on there that were maybe half unit, quarter unit sprinkles, but for the sake of this live stream in the 3-ball format, we're going to take this Tony Finau at plus 235. I'd say if you can get the same, if not better odds, I would enter that for a half unit there. But whenever we get these round 3-ball matchups on Hard Rock Bet, this is by far the best category that we have to attack. And you can see DraftKings does have these for a lot of the different matchups. But what Hard Rock Bet does is they take one matchup for 2 players out of all these different 3-balls. And they try and match them up with some of the 3-ball odds where they can, at least from what I can tell, based on their handicapping process, but they're not perfect at going out there and doing so. So if we can go out there and find some plus EV value and something that makes a little bit of sense from the traditional analysis perspective, then that's something we can go out there and enter. But for the rest of the stuff I'm entering for tomorrow, you guys can find that on the Patreon page, like I was saying before, a couple plus EV leans that we've already entered for the prop and the betting side. And then, of course, for the DFS side before, if you guys want to find my entire player pool, all my projections, everything I'm doing for moving day, you guys can find that on the Golf DFS tier. But that's all I've got. I appreciate your support on the channel as per usual. Again, the biggest live stream that we have in all the DFS streets is just a great thing. I've been working towards this 6-7 years, getting up to this point. I appreciate all your support on the channel as per usual, everyone. If you haven't already smashed that like button, go ahead and do so if you haven't already. And also go ahead and subscribe to the channel so you guys don't miss any of the content to come. We're doing the same thing for round 4, also for every single event this year. And who knows, maybe by the end of the year, we're getting like close to 5,000 views per live stream. Maybe we're getting close to 7,000 subscribers, even 8,000 subscribers. Those are the kind of goals that we have here together. But that's all I've got. I appreciate you guys. Let's go out there and build on what has been a solid start to this week. And hopefully see you guys at the top end of those leaderboards.